Welcome to another Void Video interview. I'm Evan Jordan, and today I sat down with John Gholson and Bryan Connolly. Bryan is the director, co-producer, co-editor, and kind of writer on one of my favorite films at Chattanooga Film Fest this year, Make Popular Movies. And John Gholson is the lead actor in this film who plays Lou Baghetti. And I will go ahead and, without further ado, cut it on over to the interview. But before I do so, I do want to thank Chattanooga Film Festival for, as always, an outstanding festival experience, and I very much look forward to next year. So I guess to kind of get things kicked off, for people who haven't seen the film and don't know you guys, just kind of go one by one and introduce yourselves, and then also introduce, the film and what it's kind of about.
Here, John, you want to go first?
I'll go first. Sure. I play Lou Baghetti in Make Popular Movies. And I play a director he's committed to his art, but his art is decidedly commercial and mainstream. So.
That's a great introduction to Lou.
My name is Bryan Connolly, and I am the director and producer and co-editor and our co-producer too, and kind of writer of Make Popular Movies. And I play the clumsy waiter in the long scene at the Alamo Tech Theater.
Oh, okay. I didn't put two and two together until just now, until you said that. But yeah, that's super cool. So I guess to jump off from that, I was interested in, how did the two of you meet? Was it due to this movie, or was it a pre-existing kind of working relationship, or?
This is the first time we ever worked together as an actor and a director. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I met you at Vulcan, through Vulcan people, or the Alamo through Alamo people. We've known each other.
Yeah, I think we met when you guys were trying to do a movie about kaiju, and Zach knew I was an artist and had asked me to design some kaiju, and I think that's when you and I first met. Okay. But to put that in perspective, at one of the babies at that meeting has since grown into a teenager. Michael Stevenson's daughter has grown into a teen, so it's been a few years.
Yeah,
I think that's where I met Bryan. I was a card-carrying Vulcan renter. I wasn't necessarily a regular. I was pretty infrequent. So you saw me there, but and people you worked with knew me.
And just for people to know, Vulcan was a video store that I helped run in Austin here. I started working at in 2008. So that's where I met a lot of the film people in this town, was just by being a video clerk and being at one of the last video stores that existed in this town. No longer with us, R.I.P. Vulcan.
That's super cool. And that's what Void Video is. Our whole podcast is like, I grew up in high school and in middle school. That's how I discovered most of the movies that I love now, and that's kind of what got me into movies, was riding my bike to the video store and renting stuff and coming back with a grocery sack full of movies, on the handlebars. Nice. And so, like, we miss video stores. So this podcast and what we try to do here is just our substitute, for like those conversations and those kind of things that you used to get in video stores that you don't really get, through Netflix and Redbox.
Yeah. I miss it so. But yeah, I knew John, and we've known each other for a long time. But when I was making this movie, I didn't know that he was an actor. I didn't know that I knew he was a cartoonist and a nice guy, but I had no idea that he was doing like improv and comedy and theater stuff. And the producer, Moet Jaswell, pointed, when I was trying to figure out who to be Lou Baghetti, he was like, well, John Gholson's really, really good. And I'm like, is he? I had no idea. And so he sent me a tape of some performance you did, John, where you were dressed up in like a suit and you were doing like some weird, awkward thing. I don't even remember what it was. It was something that was like really formal feeling.
I've done a couple things. So there used to be, yeah. So there used to be an experimental comedy showcase here in town called Sandbox, and I would go on Sandbox and do quasi improvisational bits, basically like similar to the Lou Baghetti character, where it's like I have a foundation, I know who the person is, I know what I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to execute, but other than that, it's unscripted. And so, and that's, I like working there, or I like working in sketch. Pure improv is a little trickier for me. That's sort of like I have a complete blank canvas and I have to think of it like who I am even on the spot. But Sandbox, I had done a bit in a suit where I wanted to prove to the audience that comedy isn't funny. And I bought this book of like the best, it was like supposed to be the best jokes of all time. And I got up on stage in a suit and I told the jokes, but I told them like just completely and totally serious, never broke. And that was a good bit. I don't know if that's what Bryan felt.
Maybe.
I also did a bit where I tried to make apple juice with my bare hands by squeezing apples, which is really, really
that's
difficult.
Great.
And I was dressed nice for that. So it was probably a Sandbox show that Moet showed you.
Definitely. Yeah. And so I saw that and I was like, well, clearly there's no one else that can play Lou Baghetti. and thankfully, John was the first and only person I ever asked to do it. So.
Well, it's incredible. Lou is definitely my favorite character of the movie. Me and Dave Lawson did a watch party of this movie together during the CFF virtual fest, and we were both just like belly laughing, like crying as soon as it opened in the bar scene with you, like, you know, insulting the bartender and stuff during the phone call. We already knew we were gonna love it. I guess too, to kind of jump off there is regarding the opening of the movie. Bryan, this question is for you: is what film is playing on screen when they're in? This is a two-part question. One is what film is playing on screen when they're in the theater?
Oh, in the movie theater at the
Right.
very, very beginning?
Right.
That is the public domain free At War with the Army, the Martin and Lewis movie.
Ah, okay. I was curious.
Which I'm a big Jerry Lewis fan, and he definitely, as a filmmaker, influenced this movie quite a bit. And then also, by chance, that movie's domain free, so I don't have to pay for the rights. I can use the sound for it.
That works perfect. And I was also curious, was there a specific reason that you chose Gorillaz as the animal? Because you could have done anything for those audience members.
People, like, not Gorillaz, but people in gorilla suits, to me, is very, very funny. Okay. And like, I love like John Landis's movie Schlock, also known as The Banana Monster, is one of my favorite movies, and that is him in a ape suit, like this wreaking comedic havoc for 90 minutes. That's and great. Then I think there's also kind of a subconscious sort of 2001 thing, I think, in the back of my head that I didn't realize until I saw the movie and was like, oh, I guess the beginning is 2001: A Space Odyssey. So there's something about like caveman, primitive man, ape man being the person that would be loud in a movie theater. I don't know. It just all kind of made sense to me.
It was great. It was like totally absurdist. And we were like, what the hell is happening? And we already were like, this is awesome. And my next question, let's bounce over to John, is how hard was it for you, John, to shift into Lou's mindset for this part when you had to become Lou?
It was actually pretty easy because I don't think Bryan knew. He may have had like a general awareness, but I'm also in the Austin Film Critics Association. And so like, I'm a huge movie nerd. I worked in movie theaters from 93 until like 2008. Off and on, it was always the job I could go back to. I worked in video stores in the 90s. I worked as a movie critic for like Huffington Post and Cinematical, stuff like that. And so I think the luck that we both had was me finding a role where I could rattle stuff off out of my mouth so easily that actually pertained to my job. Like I didn't have to do a lot of like research or hunting or would he say that or whatever. It was kind of like,
right.
Oh, I know this person. Like I know this filmmaker. I also know like the speech at the end of the movie, for instance. When I was a working critic, I got a really nasty, the first time I ever got like really nasty feedback was for a negative review of Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel. I swear to God. and it was so impassioned and so angry, and that really informed like that final speech. So there's a lot of things that just as a movie fan, as somebody who was more than a fan, but actively like, I guess, a professional movie watcher to some capacity, I was able to like really lean on in the movie in a way that was really fortuitous, because I don't think, Bryan, I don't think you knew all that like at the time.
Oh, so, I didn't know any of that. No.
That's really cool. So it was actually a pretty natural transition. That's cool. Because you kind of answered the second half. I was going to ask you, what tricks did you use to kind of help you embody the character?
I'm nicer in real life. You mentioned the bar scene in particular. Kyle, I'd never met before, and I knew he's kind of
wow.
Most of the people in the movie are home theater in Austin is a comedy theater downtown called Fallout Theater, and we all, even if we hadn't met or worked together, had at least heard of each other. And I'd heard of Kyle, but I'd never met Kyle. And we had the bar scene together, and like, that was one where he was doing such a good job and we were vibing as improvisers, but I felt so bad because I was supposed to dress him down and he'd never met me before. And like, we'd have that moment between takes and I would just be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I found out he lived in my apartment complex during that shoot. Just coincidentally, he lived in my apartment complex. And I was like, oh, great. We're going to have to hang out. We're going to have to socialize, and I'm thinking in my head, like, it's going to be nice because he's going to get to know the real me. He's not going to know me as Lou, this shithead. Like, I'm going to be able to be kind. And then COVID happened. And so I didn't see him at all. Like, we're both in the same apartment complex, but nobody's doing any socializing for like years. I end up moving out and whatever. But this is my public apology to Kyle. I'm still being apologizing for the rest of my life for giving my dressing downs. That kind of stuff doesn't come natural. I'm not quick to anger. I'm not a yeller, a screamer. Like, I don't get like mad. That stuff is stuff that you just kind of have to do. That's not necessarily stuff that's like second nature. Right. But it's I think it reads and it plays, even if I was apologizing under my breath.
It definitely does. Like, my favorite line is when he comes and he takes the drink too, and you're like, you're trying to have your conversation on the phone. You're like, what the fuck? At the same time as he's walking away with this stuff, and it's just like the combination or the clash of your two personalities really lands at that point. And it's you did a great job with Lou. I guess, Bryan, to bounce back to you, how much of the script and the story was pulled from like firsthand versus secondhand experience?
All of it is true, 100%. Literally every scene of the movie is based on something that happened to me or someone I know. Like, no joke.
That's incredible.
Definitely exaggerated to some comedic degree.
Sure.
But I feel every single scene was based on something true. Definitely.
Okay, that's great. That's super cool. It makes me like it even more. So on that note, how much of the dialogue, was scripted versus improv while shooting?
Literally all of the dialogue is improv except for the terrible dialogue that is read in the audition scene.
Wow, really? So all of it, but that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a testament to just how great all these performers are, because like we did a reading where we because like the script was only like 30 pages long, and it really was just like, here's the idea of the scene, here's the joke, here's the point of it, here's the beginning, middle, of the end, and here's what the characters are doing. And then we did 2 weekends of rehearsals, but we only rehearsed maybe a third of the scenes. Like, we didn't rehearse all of them because I wanted to kind of save whatever magic surprise could happen while we're filming. Sure. And it really was like, we did a few takes of every scene, but not too many, honestly. And we did most of them in these master shots. And it was just sort of like, we would talk before, kind of like what the A, B, and C was of every scene. And then we would maybe fine tune it with every take. But like, I made sure to just cast this incredibly well. Like, Moet and I went and really did a good job, I think, of just seeing every comedian in town and casting the best ones, the people that we really trust to be. Because so many improv movies fail because you're just like, oh, my friends are funny, good enough. and then
Right.
hit record, and then it just kind of feels like an in joke and it doesn't really work. Or sometimes improv can kind of lose itself and kind of get out of hand. But I think I would really lucky. I don't know. I was just really lucky to have these people that just knew their shit and were just actual professional comedians, and just every scene was magic. And like, there's definitely a lot that ended up on the cutting room floor. Like I ended up cutting like 40 minutes out of this movie. It was a lot longer.
Wow. Okay.
And we did a lot of takes until the scene felt right. But I don't know. I just feel like it's just everyone is this. The fact that so many people think this was a scripted comedy is just a testament to how talented and great all the performers are.
It really is. And I think I mentioned that in my review several times about how great the performers were in this. And like everybody's casted perfectly. And I never would have, based on how snappy and how just intense a lot of the dialogue is, I never would have guessed that it was all improvised like that. So that's definitely a testament to the performers.
Well, these are all people from, like John said, this is all people from the local the comedy scene. This is literally what they do for a living, and so they are performing on the stage many nights of the week, and so they just have their skills. So like a great jazz band, like you hear some good jazz music and it feels tight and it feels like they must have like written it all down, but no, they're improvising, they're making it up as they go along and kind of bouncing off each other, and that's just what these people did.
That's incredible. And I don't know if do people like revise reviews, because I almost want to bump mine up now. That's impressive.
I didn't revise mine when they complained about the squeakquel, so that's okay.
So on that note, I had an optional question here. If it was improvised, John, what's your favorite line or joke that you contributed to this movie?
I'm proud of the fact that the title wasn't the title of the movie now came from an improvisation when I charged the audience to make popular movies. I'm proud of that fact. That's kind of cool. That's just cool. That's cool as an actor to know, like, oh, I inadvertently named the movie. Like, that's really cool.
That's badass.
The part that, I hear this voice that once told me that if you laugh at yourself, it's like proof that you're an idiot. Then I'm an idiot, because I can tell you the one moment that that strikes me as the funniest, because I didn't remember it happening when I watched it when I saw this part for the first time. I was like, that's really funny. Like, I'm glad I did that. It's the part where I'm not interested in any of the actors, and then Nathan comes up to me and asks me for an autograph. And when Nathan asked me for an autograph, I'm like, hey, yeah, hey, sure. And I'm like the friendliest guy. And that made me laugh out loud, because I'd completely forgotten that I had already made that decision to react that way to him. Because it was, I didn't see it because of lockdown and COVID and all that stuff. I didn't see it for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. So it was very fresh and very new to me. And I was like, oh, I did a good thing. So in terms of like small moments, I really like that moment with Nathaniel. And then again, like line wise, I am, it's not even if it's not my most clever line, I'm really proud of the fact that the movie ended up being named after something Lou said on stage.
Absolutely. That's great. And I would have never guessed that either. That's super cool that your speech is what, they were like, we got to call the movie that now,
Yeah, the speech thing, actually, Bryan was talking about the rehearsals. I think if I remember right, I think the speech thing was the only thing that I rehearsed as Lou. And we went through a couple different ones, but like a good example of how the process would work is like in one of the run-throughs of speeches in the rehearsals, I thanked Maid Marian. And so Bryan held on to that. And then day of shoot, Bryan's like, can you please thank Maid Marian? And so that was kind of like how the writing happened, was if we had these things, he would listen to them. And then if he wanted another take with that, he would pull that out and kind of be like, can you say that again? Or will you give us some more of that? Okay. So he was sort of cherry picking from takes or rehearsals to get the material he wanted. So
that's cool. It sounds like a very organic process, and that you all bounced off of each other very well. And that's always, a great experience to have when you're working on a collaborative project. The next question also, John, and I guess you kind of answered this some earlier, but Was it difficult to become as emotionally charged as your character does in many of the scenes without laughing yourself or making the other actors laugh? Like, did you have to do separate takes because somebody cracked up at what happened or what somebody said?
I don't remember anything too crazy. I think the scenes that felt the most intense for me as an actor, and that I think we were all kind of like, certainly the pizza scene is one where we're like, we all have to kind of get this because I'm not going to eat pizza after pizza after pizza. So in order to nail this, we got to nail this. So that was one where I think everybody felt it, but it wasn't necessarily like, when it ended, then there was like the tension relief of like, we got it all. Like then there was like laughter, but it wasn't necessarily like and if Brian or Christopher Schneider, who was the DP, were laughing like over behind the scenes, I wasn't aware. I didn't see that. So if we were doing stuff that was making them laugh, I have no idea.
Okay.
But just in regards to like a response to what we were doing, the pizza one was intense. And honestly, the speech stuff was actually intense, but not in a way that was like funny. I remember being up on stage and giving parts of that speech and it being like, the energy being really weird and like pin drop silent. We were in a big, like an old cafeteria, like a school cafeteria. So we're in this huge, huge space. And there's people that are like, the space was a shared space. So there were people in there that were like doing their daily work.
Wow.
There were people and the other actors, things like that. And it was an interesting air. Like the atmosphere was different as an actor standing on stage, I think, giving that stuff, but it didn't necessarily, but that stuff, again, it wasn't funny. It was like, it had like an intensity to it in the moment of just like, everyone is quiet, which means I must be doing something right. Like I can't hear anything. So, and that's kind of a strange airless feeling as an actor to kind of get a response that's like, it's almost like a wrestler cutting like a promo or a preacher, like Fire and Brimstone, where everyone is just like, and I'm not trying to pump myself up or blow myself up or whatever, but it's just, that was an interesting feeling because I don't think I've ever in anything I've done felt that like stillness that took place during that scene. So actually your question about did we crack each other up, for me it was like, no, we had these weirdly intense times. Like these intense, the pizza scene being like strangely intense or the speech being strangely intense. But I can't speak for Brian, who may have been cracking up like off
the whole time.
30 feet away, Brian may have been laughing.
I definitely was like, it was like hard not to ruin a take with laughing because I was just watching this happen and there was so many surprises. And it would always be like we would yell cut, and then that's when we would all laugh. It would just be like holding it and be like, it would just be this big release. And definitely during the big, because all these scenes I want to do in these kind of most of them in these master takes and these long takes, so you can't. If you fuck up, you got to start all the way at the beginning. Right. And so even though I would like normally just be laughing and like break, like I was just like, I have to let them keep going. And then I'll like, so there's a lot of like biting my thumb and my tongue and like just waiting for it to end. And especially the hardest was definitely the pizza scene. Because like, as that was going on, and that's a 8.5 minute take, I think, with no cut.
It's long.
And so like, it's long. And so like it's just getting funnier and funnier, and like
it does.
So many things were going that weren't planned that I didn't know was going to happen, and so it was just like as it was happening, I was like, "This is great. I really hope this works out to the end," because that in the movie that is take one. That's it. Like we didn't do any, and we didn't even do any rehearsals for that scene either. We just did it, and that's all. Like what exists in the movie is all that happened, and Brian, so it was like once it got what.
I said, Brian just said, "Do you think you can eat a whole pizza?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so."
and there were a few little notes for the actors, but like I didn't know that John was going to make the pizza delivery guy stand and wait.
That's what I was going to say. Is like almost at first.
That was a weird choice. Like,
you don't know that he's going to eat the whole pizza at first. That's not even the joke yet. And it's like he's telling the pizza guy, "Hang on a second. And it's like, why can't he leave?"
And it's so funny. And I was originally going to have it just be in one long static take, but Christopher decided to move the camera around, and I was a little nervous about that, being like, well, what if you miss the moment. I want to make sure we get him eating the pizza or this, but he did such like, he's an amazing DP, and he just got the right, he just knew. It was like a documentary. He knew exactly when to get the right beats, the moments, and when to pull back. And like that whole scene's a miracle. Like I compare that to like when you watch scenes in movies when they're going to blow up a building or something and they know it's the only take and you can't fuck it up. And that was just sort of what it felt like. That was like the most nerve-wracking thing, but it was also the funniest thing. So it was like, I can't laugh. I can't ruin this take. They can't be laughing. And so I really was back there biting my tongue. I
think the closest, if I ever like broke character and there wasn't a cut, like that scene, I remember Alex, who I've been in stuff with before, who played Alex is, what's her role? She's like a PA in the movie.
She's like the PA / maybe she's the screenwriter, and clearly she's a writer with the scenes later when she has those pitch meetings. Right.
Yeah. So if I was ever going to break, because I remember breaking mentally, even if I wasn't like laughing, I remember going, what the hell is she doing? Is when she started eating the crusts. So if there was ever a moment where I was going to lose my shit, it would have been seeing Alex reach over and grab the crust and start eating the crust.
That was really funny.
In my mind, I was like, whoa, like, should I react? Do I keep going? Like, what do I do? And so she's great. She's really great.
And I feel like that scene was what I had hoped this whole movie would be like. And I think it was. Like, I really wanted to, like, I've been trying to make movies for a while, and I was always writing them out and making these big fancy things that I could never possibly make on my own and nobody else wanted to make. And I just like the idea of like hanging out with a bunch of funny people and having these ideas and just spending the day just kind of getting into this insanity and just kind of getting into these ideas and these moments and playing off each other and just sort of seeing what happens, you know, and what we have at the end of the day. And it was a purposely sort of underwritten movie plot wise, which, you know, some people have not enjoyed that about it, that it's not like a big plot movie, but I just wanted to be like with these characters, just sort of just being funny and just having a movie that was funny, you know?
Absolutely. And it definitely has a story. That's what I mentioned in the review, is it's like skits, but they work together to make a story. So I love it. I think that's great. I guess you guys have kind of covered, I was going to ask what were the most fun for each of you and the most difficult, but we kind of talked about that. So I have a funny question to kind of close things out. What's your favorite Jack Nicholson performance?
From the actors in this movie or from actual Jack Nicholson?
Can we do both?
I don't. I think my favorite of the people in the movie. Well, what's funny is like half of the actors couldn't quite get the Jack Nicholson. Like they didn't quite, for whatever reason. Like in my mind, I was like, they're all gonna really do these like terrible Jack Nicholson impersonations. And I think that a lot of them hadn't seen as much Jack Nicholson as I thought I'd hoped they would. And so they kind of channeled a very weird version of Jack Nicholson. But I mean, I think definitely Nathaniel like did this kind of yelling, doing this kind of like yelling, like
leaned forward
sort of thing. And it's really this kind of violent Jack. And then in terms of actual Jack Nicholson, I know it's obvious and stupid, but I really, really love him as the Joker. And I saw that movie when I was 9 and it had such an impact on me. And I still think he's the best Joker. And I think he's just so hammy and big, but also terrifying in that movie. And it's just like iconic and great. And I know that's maybe a boring answer, but I
love it. I love it.
So I think the best Jack Nicholson is Nathaniel, but that's not my favorite Jack Nicholson. I think Franny's is my favorite Jack Nicholson. I think Franny's weird thing where she kind of sounds like that,
creep from behind the chair.
Franny is my favorite of the Jack Nicholson impersonations. I think Nicholson as an actor is pretty untouchable, from like Easy Rider all the way to what's the Shirley MacLaine, Deborah Winger movie?
Terms of Endearment.
And I think something happens in Terms of Endearment where he seems to grasp who Jack the persona is in a way that he hasn't before. With going on this whole tangent, I've thought a lot about Jack Nicholson.
That's great.
But
I knew that Jack Nicholson was in there for a reason, so I figured this would be a fun thing to touch on.
I at that point, and it's not like he never gives another good performance. He gives other good performances, but he knows when to turn Jack on as Jag, is what people think of, the guy on the front row of the Lakers. And I think he first appears really fully formed in terms of endearment, and then he leans on that persona from there on out in that career. But that 10-year block from Easy Rider to like The Shining in terms of endearment, absolutely untouchable. And my favorite movie of all time is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I have to say McMurphy.
Right on.
But I think anything in that window is just absolutely terrific.
I during CFF, I put in the Discord when I poured my first drink, here's for the first of the day, fellas, from Easy Rider. I love that movie, and I love his character in it. So that's great. And I was curious about that. How I'm assuming Jack Nicholson made it into there because you guys love Jack Nicholson. Is there a story behind that, or is it?
I had an idea for the longest time of a short film of like a guy trying to cast a movie and people only acting like Jack Nicholson and him or her just being confused by that and having to pick the best of the Jack. So that is definitely an idea I've had for years. And then this was the first time where I was like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just have let's have a director who demands that they do it as Jack Nicholson. And I like the idea of like, you gauge which actors are good enough for your movie based on them playing one of the great actors of all time, and like, and then it's an even playing field. It's like, who can do the best of this great performer, and then they can be in the movie. So I thought it was just kind of a silly idea. And also like people who do Jack Nicholson impersonations are always like, to me, that's like some of the bottom of the barrel of comedy. It's like when you watch like really lame, like Rich Little specials, or just like the least funny, like Friar's Roast, or like when Mickey Dolenz would do, it was like that kind of like lame stand-up comedian in the 80s. They often would pull out a terrible Jack Nicholson impersonation, and I'm always really fascinated by that. So,
Bryan, you have no idea, but I do this bit where I am a comedian that's frozen in ice and thawed out nowadays, and I have a bad Jack Nicholson impersonation, as well as a bad Ronald Reagan. But yeah, there's Jack Nicholson in that bit.
I think that's just great. Being a child of the 80s, I just grew up watching a lot of bad like Jack Nicholson impersonation.
Okay. I love it. It makes for a great audition scene. It really does. And I love this movie, and I can't wait to have a copy of it sitting on my shelf, and I'd be able to watch it and show it to all my friends and laugh along with everyone. And I guess to kind of close things out, why don't you guys talk about, what you're working on, your upcoming projects, plug yourself. Where can people go keep up with you on the socials and the internets?
John?
I'm at Gholson, Gholson, on Twitter and Instagram. And I have I also, like we mentioned, I'm a cartoonist. You can go to mrgholson.com and see my stuff there. The next thing that I'm doing, I did a movie that hasn't been announced with Noah Segan from Knives Out. And I have a really small part in it, but it was really cool to get to do it. And I can't wait to talk about it, and I can't talk about it. That's the way those things go. And otherwise, if you're in the Austin area, I'm on stage every now and then over at Fallout Theater here in Austin.
Right on. I've seen your cartoons on Instagram too, and they're amazing.
Oh, thanks.
By the way. I love them.
Thank you.
I dissuade most people from using social media, but if you really want to talk to me, I'm at Bryan Connolly 1 WON on Instagram. I don't mess around with Twitter. I don't want to get involved in that. But that's where you can find me if you want to, complain about something. And then for working on stuff, I just finished a script today on that John definitely has a part in, and it's a comedy horror movie.
Oh, all right,
I'm going to try to get some rich person to be tricked into paying for it, and that'd
be amazing.
I'm always writing. I'm always working on something, so I have like a million things at once. So like my hope is to have something going sometime sooner than later. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I urge everybody listening to this to definitely go follow these two fellas and keep up with their cool projects, and definitely check out Make Popular Movies. Is there any distribution plans for that yet, or still working on that?
Not yet. I've submitted it to a lot of festivals, so I'm waiting for the next one that isn't a rejection.
Right.
So we'll
Oh,
see. I'm hoping
if they reject this movie, they didn't watch it.
That's what I think. Yeah. But like, I'm hoping that after the Chattanooga Film Festival last week, and we won a nice little jury prize, that maybe that'll persuade some of these festival programmers to show it, and I will gladly come to any festival that shows it. But then after that, I don't know. Like, plan to say maybe go on the road with it, tour little theaters with it, and then definitely make some sort of home video version of it.
That's what I'm can't wait to hold it in my hand, you know. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and talk to me about this. And Make Popular Movies was among my favorite films of Chattanooga, and I'm really excited that for more people to get to see it, and that I've now found you guys and can keep up with all the cool shit you're doing. So
cool.
But yeah, thanks again, guys. And
thanks for having us
so much.
Absolutely. Yeah.